There we go. I'm going to pop you here.
Awesome. How are you doing, beautiful soul?
Very well. How are you?
I'm well. So thank you for joining, and thank you everyone who is hopping on the live stream. I am so excited to have this magical woman. She is the founder of Reigniting Women, and she has quite literally reignited about 30,000 overnight with her recent reel that went viral. And her medicine and yeah, just the magic she has to share is incredibly potent. And we wanted to hop on live and just chat about our journey with the divine feminine and our experience in really stepping into our light, our dharma, and ultimately embracing that wild feminine essence within. And yeah, so I'll just pass it to you, Laura. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. Well, for those who don't know me, my name is Laura Bird. So I've been working with women for about 8 years now. So I feel very, very blessed. We've had a long journey with my clients, and I work with women mainly in the womb space, bringing them into their divine feminine essence, because I notice as well, I think a lot of us do, how lost women have become, how they've lost their way, they've lost their purpose, they've lost their femininity, they've lost their softness. And it's just working with women to bring them back into that, to remind them about their femininity. I find that women are actually really crying out to be softened. One of my followers mentioned this to me yesterday. She said, I'm desperate to be soft and just to be feminine and just to be free. And yet the world that she was creating around her was not allowing that for her. And I think for women, it's just creating your own inner world and creating your own outer world where the feminine can kind of step in. So having this conversation today about the wild feminine, I think is perfect timing. It just goes straight along with this topic because it's something that's coming up for everyone, and we give everyone today permission to be yourself and to be authentic and to be fiery, right? The wild feminine.
Yeah. Yes. Shall we talk a bit about how we met? Yeah.
Yes, because I love this story. Oh, this is such a beautiful story. So it's probably a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, I was sitting at the beach here. We both live in the same area. So I was sitting on the beach. I was in a meditation, talking to my spirit guides, as I always do. And this voice says to me, there's an event tonight that you need to go to. And I was so perplexed because when I normally tune into my guides, for anyone who does this type of work, it's a very gentle message. It's a very, a nudge in this direction or a nudge back in that direction. So to get such a clear message of you need to go to an event tonight, it really threw me back. So I was like, okay. And I carried on with my day. I got my morning coffee. I went upstairs back to my apartment, and I went and sat down and started doing work. And the voice again was like, there's an event tonight that you need to go to. And so I thought, right. So I got on Facebook and I looked around. I thought, there's nothing here. Like, I'm scrolling. There's no event in town tonight that I can see. And my thumb, as if someone was holding it, to be honest with you, it kind of went like this, and it hit this little calendar button that was on the top of the page. And when I did that, Ali's event came up, your event for singing bowls and, and breath work. And I was like, oh, this looks good. I forgot that this was on. I bookmarked this. I thought, when is that? And it was that night. Yeah. So it was the fastest ticket I've ever bought in my life. I literally went on, bought my ticket, paid my money, and I showed up. And obviously we got to meet, and I made some good friends that night as well. And here we are today.
Yeah.
So the universe has aligned us very specifically. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining. Yeah, this was just sort of a spontaneous idea where when I bumped into you, in yoga, I said, I think I was promoting an upcoming event, November 4th at Power Living Manly for anyone in the area, or November 5th. And it's like, well, if anyone wants to come, and then you introduced yourself and said, yeah, I came to your recent event. And it's just such a beautiful synchronicity. And I think it ties in so perfect to this concept of leaning into the divine feminine. And for me, it's been quite a journey in understanding understanding what the divine feminine even is, and really understanding and listening to it in my own journey. As I shared with you, you know, I very much so rejected my femininity as a little girl. I was a total tomboy. I pursued an electrical engineering degree. I looked at my mom and sister as, you know, the epitome of the wild divine feminine. You know, they're intuitive, sensitive, emotional creatures of the moon. And I was like, hold up, 1+1 was 2 yesterday, and it's not 2 today, and that scares the shit out of me. And I looked at my dad as the engineer and the stoic, you know, successful sort of householder, and I thought, right, let's be like that. And this emotional thing is a risk to my success, and feeling my feelings, dangerous, not an efficient use of time. So I pretty much just swallowed it down, marched forward, picked a degree, you know, basically based off a salary. I was like, right, well, I like Legos, I like math, you know, we'll just go ahead and go for electrical engineering, because what's most important is to make the most amount of money you possibly can. And I had I did not think about what I was passionate about. I didn't even really know what truly made me happy at that time. And it didn't really unravel and reveal itself until I hit absolute rock bottom, and I knew I needed to make a change, which I've spoken to on several different platforms about my dark night of the soul, and, you know, traveling around the world looking for answers from every guru, every shaman, every healer, and ultimately reconnecting and reclaiming that wild feminine essence, and that part of me that doesn't necessarily need to make sense, and listens and feels as opposed to calculates and strategizes and conceptualizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And when I came to your event, you described it as the dark night. You said it's not the dark night of the soul, it was the dark night of the decade. And I thought, she's my friend. Like that's spot on. You know, people think, oh, I've gone through the dark night of the soul. You know, there's going to be a few months, maybe 6 months, where I'm going to really lose myself and not really know where I'm going. But no, it's far wide, and it's so much bigger. And I think you should be so proud of yourself that you've gone on that journey and like been willing to lose yourself, because we have to lose ourselves, and we have to be willing to let parts of us die. And that's a really emotional experience. And I've talked about this on several videos in the past, because I think that it's important for people to understand, like, what you've been through, you're going to have to let that version of you that needed to become that way to survive, she has to die. And the longer I kind of went into that spiritual journey, the more I was sensitive to the feeling of these parts dying off. Like, you know what I mean? You can start really understanding, like, oh, that's that, because we do it so many times. So it is like a dark night of the decade. It's the journey of like, who am I? But we have permission as women to reinvent ourselves, because we don't, like, you would have learned this in corporate. We can't show up the same way every single day. That's what men do. That's what men do. I'm emotional today. Tomorrow I might be a bit angry or a bit angry or a bit feisty. And the day after that, I might be feeling really placid and I don't really want to talk. So how am I supposed to show up the same way every day? Like, we can't do that as women. And when we try to, that's what creates that stiffness, right? Like, we become very rigid and
Yes, seasons, absolutely. I mean, when I left corporate round one, and I left San Francisco on a one-way ticket to Panama, and I had my backpack guitar, and yeah, not any, zero F's left to give, basically. And I realized that it was so much more than leaving corporate and finding a new way of making money, but it was really understanding the seasons of my body. And unfortunately, but fortunately, that whole time I was traveling, I didn't bleed, because my body was it was so scared. I was so afraid of what happens when I run out of money, what happens when where will I go? What will I do? Who will I become? And so it took maybe about 7 months to even realize that not bleeding was a problem. Because I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Then I get to Bali, and it's like, honey, you haven't had your moon cycle? Like, what? And I was like, oh, this is now important. Right. I care about my moon cycle and calling it my moon cycle and diving into all that. So it was just such a journey to reclaim that element of myself where it started as this very cerebral, like, I need to get out of corporate, it hurts, and I don't know what it is. And for many, corporate is fine. Some people are totally happy. And, I'm not an advocate for everybody leaving corporate and booking a one-way ticket to Panama. But for some of us who feel deep, burning pain in, the lives that we're in, you got to listen to that. And for me, I had to literally crack and break and hit rock bottom for me to really understand that I was just fully out of alignment with my dharma, with what I've been put here to do.
Mm-hmm. And did you always know that your singing was part of your dharma? Like, because obviously that's a talent that you must have had for a very long time. Even if you weren't doing it with singing bowls, you must have known that you have a voice. No?
You know what's funny is not really. So I played guitar and sang, from about 16 years old, and I had a friend. Her name is Nagme, and you should all follow her because she's incredible. She, when we were in San Francisco, I shared with her my passion of music, and it inspired her to start writing. And she convinced me, we're going to open mic, Sally. Do you have a Facebook music page? We need to promote ourselves. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to play in front of people. I don't really think I'm that good. Da-da-da. She booked shows for us. She pulled me out of my comfort zone. She's like, Monday night, Tuesday night, open mic at Riptide, open mic at... So in San Francisco, I had this beautiful soul just really pushing me into that space. And I never really thought I was any good. And then I allowed myself to just keep playing and playing and playing. And then I realized it was so much more fulfilling than I even realized, because I got out of my head and then I let myself create. And that was where the real sort of reclamation or the awakening of my femininity, or at least the remembering of my femininity, came through, where I got out of the structure of how music should sound and how it should look, how, the chords and all the things, do what everybody else is doing. And so yeah, it was a painful thing at first. Like, I don't want to do this, and now I'm doing this.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that if there's any blocks or anything in like the throat chakra, you would have, when you started doing that singing, like it would have probably come up and out to be looked at, right? And the throat chakra is connected to the womb. It's the union, right? It's the twin organ. So as well, you're like, activating this, but you're also activating the womb. Because when I came to your singing bowl event, the whole time I was lying there, it was just my throat. Just, and after a while, I was like, okay, like it felt like it wasn't moving, but I know I have blocks here. I know I do. So it was really pulling that out. But again, because of the union between the throat chakra and the womb, it just activates the feminine. Just completely brings her out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you had that experience.
Yeah, it's great. The woman sat behind me. She had the same experience. So she was someone, again, I sat with her and I thought, oh, I like her. She looks very powerful. I need to speak to her. And we ended up chatting afterwards and, exchanging numbers, and we're very good friends now. So she had the same experience. Everyone did. Everyone was saying that they had a beautiful experience with everything you did that night. It was beautiful. And everyone that follows your work obviously knows that because they're here with you enjoying that. Yeah, it activates everything. And as women, when we start activating these different archetypes, like the wild woman, that's one of I think it's one of the most lost female archetypes personally, because like, for me, the huntress, which is the wild woman, I always label myself as the huntress. I've always been like that. I create my own path. My hair tells you that. I will wash my hair in the morning. I'll brush it. It will be all sleek. Within half an hour, it looks like this. It's wild and crazy, and it's thick and what, And I've always been like, you know what? I'm just a wild feminine, and I just have to accept it. My mom would come up to me and be like, "Laura, brush your hair. It's got to look nice. It's got to look sleek and beautiful and feminine." I'm like, Mum, this is what happens to it. It dreadlocks itself. Like, this is my hair. And so there was a part of me, like, just even through that was like just trying to embrace the wildness. And I just wanted to create my own path, and no one understood it. And I did exactly what you did. You know, I had my own version of packing up my stuff and moving. Like uh, I mean, I did it 3 years ago, um, but I did it again 3 months ago, and I sold everything. I sold my car. I gave the rest of my stuff away to Goodwill, and I gave away my shoes to my sister as a gift because she took care of me for 6 weeks. And I booked a ticket, and I didn't know where I was going to live when I got here. And I found an apartment within 22 hours of landing, so it all worked out really, really great. But I just couldn't do it anymore, and there was something in me that was like, okay, Laura, you are stepping onto this path where you like who you are, you love who you are, you're starting to understand your authenticity, but the world you made around you doesn't match. Like, it doesn't. You live in a country that you don't want to be in. The friends aren't resonating with you anymore. You're not in a good relationship. I was not in a good relationship. I just left everything and got on a plane and just said no. Because I asked myself one day, I said, show me as my best self. I was like, let me just see what that looks like. And I was, tuning in. I was like, show me that. And I saw this version of me with this colored hair. My hair was blonde at the time. And this colored hair, my natural color. And I was wearing this long, flowy cream skirt. I had a little shell bracelet on my ankle. And I just had these bright blue eyes and no makeup. And I was just really just natural, authentic, and raw. And I was like, that's me. And I can't live in England and be that. I need to go back to Australia. So I packed everything up. And yeah, people don't understand. They don't get it. And for anyone that wants to make anyone understand their journey, it's that they won't. It really is your journey. And if anything, I felt a little bit, there's a few people in my life that I actually felt a little bit bullied by when it came to what I was doing. They're like, what are you doing, Laura? You just, one minute you're doing this, you did your law practices, and then you went and did a fashion degree, and now you're teaching spirituality and you're teaching femininity. Like, you can't just keep doing this. You can't just keep flitting around and teaching whatever you want to do and doing whatever you want to do. You need to settle down and buy a house. And I'm just like, I'm sweating just thinking about it. And I'm not saying that grounding yourself isn't important, because it is. Ground yourself and have a home. That's really important. But at the same time, there's a difference between having a home and being suffocated and stuck. That's a whole different thing. And you really find yourself when you pack up and move, right? Like, you really find you. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
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 It's funny because when I left San Francisco, I thought I was going to go around the world and go back because I was afraid of what might happen, after a year. And so I had the whole, we'll take a year off and then we'll go back to that life because it's safe and we know, what is known is safe. And then within just a month of being away, my sublet, or my friend who was subletting my flat, calls me, goes, so your real estate agent or your landlord now knows you're subletting and she's not happy about it. I'm really sorry. And so, long story short, she helped me get rid of everything. And so my plan to circumnavigate globe just turned to navigate globe. And it was either go back and squat on that apartment or pay rent while traveling, or just say, you know what, fuck it. Let's go. But at the time, I hadn't really embraced that trust in the universe. I was like, okay, cool. And my whole body, like I said, it just was like, okay. And there I was, like, living the dream and with the backpack traveling around, I went 16 countries and 5 continents, but I was so lost and confused and like, what am I here for? What am I doing? And I took it all so seriously, and I forgot to really, at the time, I didn't realize or remember just how important it is to play and have fun. And so as I tune into that, the archetype of the wild woman, it's like, yeah, she follows her bliss. She follows her joy. She does what feels good. It doesn't make sense, and maybe it's different tomorrow. And so what? My very much so, like, engineering background brain was like, well, we calculate, we strategize, and we plan, and but I'm different today than I was yesterday. And then starting to study energy and understanding, vibrations of sound, and how, well, we live in a vibrational universe, and we're constantly changing and shifting. And how can you expect what I wanted as a 16-year-old for a college degree to actually really resonate for my whole rest of life? And It's it's so interesting how the universe works and just takes us on these journeys and puts us on these paths, whether we're kicking and screaming along the way or not. It's just been like, just take me, universe. I'm open. I'm ready. And you came, you said 3 years ago you came here?
Yeah, I moved here. So the first time I got here was 2019. So I lived here near Sydney, and then I moved to Byron Bay. This is when I really learned about the universe and trusting and going with it because, I got here 2019, it was April, it's my 30th birthday. So I stayed here for a year, and in January, the talks of COVID were circling. And I was like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, but everyone was buying canned food and toilet paper, and I was like, well, I don't know, I'm not going to do that. But then what happened was I went up to Byron just for a weekend, and I was like, I love it here. And there was nothing keeping me in Sydney. I was dating someone, but he broke it off like a week before. So I thought, you know what, I think I'm done being in like a town. I want to be more in nature. And so I decided to move up there, and I went up there the next weekend, and I bought a car, and I found an apartment. That was a gift because it was COVID. It was like, you need 48 hours to view anything. You need like to give notice. I'm like, I need an apartment now. Like this weekend, I need a house. And I found one. The landlord was like, yep, you can have it. It was great. I viewed it on the same day. It was easy. So I went back here, packed up, drove all my stuff up. And the moment I got there, lockdown. So rather than being in a town and being stuck in an apartment, I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a beautiful apartment overlooking the ocean. It was incredible. But my house in Byron was open. It had a patio overlooking the Byron Shire. So I was in nature. I could walk to the beach. So when COVID was happening, I was completely protected. I didn't even really experience it. And by the time they started to get more strict here, like 18 months later, I moved back to England for a year, and COVID was already over and done with. So they weren't wearing masks. So they literally were like, okay, time to go there, time to go there, time to go there. And I just do what I'm told. So I'm very well protected. So that was probably the biggest experience where I learned, hang on a minute, if I just do what I feel I need to, even if no one understands it, I'm always very well taken care of. So when I felt like, I'm going to go back to Australia, where do I go? Do I go to Byron, back to Byron, or do I go over to the West Coast? And I was sat on the beach, and it was just like, you need to go back to Manly. And I was like, really? That surprised me. Like, you need to go back to Manly. Okay, so look where we are now,
Paradise. Oh, yes. For anyone who doesn't know Manly, it is absolutely heaven on earth, and you should come visit Sydney, Australia, and take the ferry to Manly. It is amazing. Hello, people. Um, Beautiful. So let's talk more about like, yeah, I think what's been really alive for me is fear and intuition and understanding like, is it my fear talking, trying to protect me, or is it my intuitive guidance? I'd love to hear your perspective on like how you discern, and this is an evolving practice in my world as I'm, still growing every moment.
We always are. It's never ending. It never will end. For anyone that thinks when will the spiritual journey be over? When we die. Like and every little bit. Yeah, the difference between intuition and fear. I mean, for me, I tune into my body because when it's my intuition, I feel myself being pulled forward. And when it's a fear, I feel myself being pushed back. It reminds me. But something I had to learn was that when I have I had to learn the difference between impulse and intuition. Because I can be really impulsive and be like, I need to go and do that. I need to go and do that. I need to go and do that. But then nothing that I actually really needed to do was getting done because I was like quite flighty. And yoga, like with the Ayurveda, it's the Vata aggravated, right? So I really had to look at that. So when I was feeling these impulses, I was like, hang on a minute, let's look at the long term. If I follow all these impulses, in the long run, I don't get where I want to get to. If I slow down, intuition is more like, oh, you know what I really really feel like I should do that today. At some point today, when I finish my work, I'm going to go there because I really feel called to be there for whatever reason. That's your intuition. Impulse and fear is very quick. It's like trauma bonding. It's like when you see a man and go, oh, him, I want him, I want him. Oh, red flag. Like, no, wounds activating, right? Fear speaking up. So I think fear is very quick. And there's a fear that, like, if I don't do it, something bad's going to happen. I need to go and do that thing. That, I think, is fear.
Yeah, it's been something I've been really looking at is the vibration behind all my decisions and actions. So is it coming from a place of fear or is it coming from a place of love? Because fear contracts, love expands. And looking back in my life, fear pretty much drove the majority of my decisions. I'm going to get a really good degree because I'm afraid of being a failure. I'm going to climb this corporate ladder because I'm afraid of running out of money, or I'm afraid of what other people might think. And it's been a whole lifetime has been just blocks and blocks of fear-based decisions. And in retrospect, I have to thank those in a way, because following all my fear flags led me to absolutely crumble and break, and then take a really hard look at, okay, who am I? What do I even like? What do I want to do in this world? And so it's interesting looking at the whole divine orchestration of the fear, but ultimately it all works out in the end, ironically. But I love that fear versus impulse, because or intuition versus impulse, because I do know for me it's either coming from the heart, a decision of like, I feel really called to do this thing, or it's coming from the head. It's like, oh, I should do this because if I don't, then this will happen or whatnot. And it's interesting, especially running your own business, and you've been doing for 8 years. I've just been doing this in the last couple of years, and the last full time in the last year. And for me, it's been a real initiation in looking at a lot of the shadow elements coming up, and a lot of the fears. And when you have a salary, it's like, well, I could feel like shit most of the time. I'm still going to get paid when I'm going to get paid. And when you're operating your own business, it's like, no, everything is vibrational, and how I feel radiates into the world and attracts or detracts what is ultimately going to come into my orbit. So how has it been for you, like running your own business for like 8 years, you YouTuber?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't expect because my followers were coming from YouTube. I gained like 20,000 followers on YouTube in the first 6 months of me putting my work out, and then it kind of just evened out. And then obviously on Instagram, I've just gone viral, and I don't even know how many followers I've got at this point. So everything kind of like, we were discussing earlier, like I'm quite a fast-paced woman. Like when I work with my clients, if they book a mentorship, I say, look, you're going to change really quickly. You're going to have to prepare yourself because I move really quick. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that I've gone from 4,000 to 30,000 in 4 days, because I'm just like, okay, I'm obviously vibrationally ready. But yeah, your energy, your vibration when it comes to being self-employed, like it's very triggering, Ali. It's triggering because you're going to have to look at everything if you want to be self-employed. So you'll know what I mean. Like if you're having a bad day, that will be reflected back to you. If you're going through something, if you're going through a breakup, you're going to see that reflected back. The clients aren't coming in. I had to reframe it because I was like, look, the universe is not bringing anyone in because I'm going through a breakup and I need time to myself. I had to frame it in a way that felt good. But I also love that if I woke up in the morning and thought, do you know what, I actually really don't feel well today, I'm not feeling clients, and I've got 3, I can absolutely guarantee you there'll be 3 emails in my inbox saying, Laura, I'm really sorry, can I reschedule? Happens every time. The universe always shows up for me. It's why I completely trust the universe. It's never let me down. And I know some people think that the universe is against them. It's not. You are the universe. If you don't like what the universe is showing you, you have to change the internal. But working for 8 years, it is very triggering. You're going to have to look at like self-sabotage, right? You're going to have to look at procrastination. You're going to have to look at your fears. You're going to have to look at rejection, like reaching out to people, like, you know, us, you know, me reaching out to you and talking to you, like, you could have easily said to me, oh, I'm not interested in talking to you. You know, and we have to deal with that, and we have to put out content. You know, I was putting out content for like on Instagram 6 years, and I felt like no one was watching, and that's so triggering because I have so much passion in helping women. I'm like, I'm just putting out all this content, and I feel like it's really good, and I'm getting like 4 views. What is the point? Like, it's really triggering. I felt very invisible. So being self-employed, it's going to activate all your wounds. It's going to call for you. It's going to kind of call you forward into being more and really looking at yourself. And there's more good than bad, I think, because, you know, I don't work when I have my period. I do more work when I'm ovulating because I've got more energy and I'm like, I'm ready for whatever the universe brings me. But you're allowed to ebb and flow when you work for yourself. I'm actually running a course at the moment. I'm halfway through teaching women within a 12 frame of how to build your own spiritual business. And they're doing amazing. They're doing really great things. And seeing them and how they suddenly feel like, Laura, I have a purpose. I know why I'm here now. That is such an amazing thing to hear. And we all have a purpose. Every single one of us, we all have a divine purpose. It just might not be what we think it is. Like you said, you didn't know it was going to be something. You didn't know. And to be honest with you, I didn't really know. Like, I've been teaching femininity and womb healing and, you know, childhood healing and I've been teaching loads of things for ages. But when the video went viral, it was all about relationships and how men and women love. And suddenly that's all I'm talking about. Like, that's all I'm teaching. So I was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So you get pulled in, you get invited, and sometimes you don't really have a choice. It happens. And then like your friend who said, look, I'm booking this venue, come and sing. I'm booking this one, come and sing. That's an angel right there. That's like a soul contract, get you onto your path. These people exist all around us. I was definitely called in as well. Like, people saying to me, oh, you should do this, you should do that. They're everywhere. We have to pay attention. But you would have an angel around you, you know?
I did. Nagme, I love you. Yeah, and just so much medicine in that is just really honoring what's happening and trusting that it's all meant to be exactly as it is. And even the pain and even the darkness and even those days where we absolutely question everything, coming back to that trust and that full surrender in the universe, and, you know, call it spirit, call it God, call it whatever you want to call it. You know, there's some greater consciousness, the same consciousness that beats our hearts, the same consciousness that, you know, digests our food, is orchestrating everything in this world. And coming back to that trust that, for me, you know, I thought that I had to force everything in the universe, right? That very masculine side of me that said, I need to control this, and I need to put this here and this there, and then that way that will line up. And then when I go like that, they'll all just, and yep. And the more I forced and forced and forced, it was like the more things contracted. And it's been, I love the term from a beautiful book by Tosha Silver called It's Not Your Money, where she talks about releasing the burden of doership. Releasing the burden of doership, because we think that we need to, and I love vision boards, and I love the idea of like the mind movies and getting clear on what you want to create and what you want to manifest. But she also takes it a step further. It's like, you think this divine power that created you and that created worlds doesn't know what's best for you and when? You think you need to tell it? And I'm like, oh, shit, she made me onto something. And just saying that I trust that what I need to know will be presented to me in the correct time, space, configuration, and really surrendering it to that higher power, that power that, you know, that grows the, you know, the flowers, they find their way to the sun, and the trees that sprout up, not down. And yeah,
there's definitely a powerful message in that. And even when I got here, I was a bit lost with my work, because I taught so many different things, and I was like, what do I have a niche? Like, what's my specific thing, and what do I do with it now? I've done so many things. What do I do with it? And I was sat on the beach, because I'm always sat on the beach when I get these messages. I was sat on the beach here in Manly, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And I kept asking that. I've been asking that for months. Like, I'm confused. What am I really supposed to do? And finally, this message came through like, you're asking the wrong question. I was like, okay, so what question would you like me to ask? And they were like, well, it's not about what should I be doing, it's who should I be? That's it. Who should I be? You don't, and I don't know about you, but I was brought up so, my mum very much is about doing things, getting things done. She has to earn her right to sit down and watch TV in the evening. Literally, she'll say to you, I've really earned my sit down. And so that's just her upbringing. And so I grew up around that. Me and my sisters were always like scared to take a nap or scared to sit and watch TV because we knew she'd be judging, being like, well, you can't sit down. So we were raised with that mentality of like, you can't rest and you can't be. And so whenever I needed to, the guilt would come up, and I used to feel so ashamed of myself if I just needed some time. And that, a lot of women have that, a lot of men have that too. But we need more sleep than men, and we need a bit more rest than men because of everything that our body goes through with having a womb. But when they told me that, I was like, I wonder if I just slow down and sit back and allow myself to be present, where would I take myself? And I was like, well, I want to go and be myself during a yoga class. I want to go be myself and read a book on the beach. And I turned everything in and was like, I want to experience myself. And that was it. And then the work actually started shifting, and then obviously we know what happened recently, but everything blew up. So it was just like, oh, I'm allowed to just be. I don't have to feel ashamed of that. I don't have to feel guilty about that. I'm allowed to just be. And we give permission to all women watching this right now and beyond, that you're allowed to just be, and you're still enough. That's such a big message.
Oh.
And it's of the wild feminine. Like, we don't have to keep pretending that we're doing something and everything's okay. And, it's like, no, take off the mask and just lie down. Just yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one in terms of I'm not worthy unless I do this, look a certain way, have this many followers, make this much money, whatever it may be. And it's like, no, we are worthy by birth, just being here. And we don't need anything or anyone. We don't need to prove ourselves to anything or anyone. And yeah, it's been this constant, life is an experiment in a way where we're the scientists and the experiment of our own divinity in many senses, and witnessing that those days where I'm just not really feeling it, as opposed to sitting at my desk and being like, I'm gonna, crank some things out. And I don't do that often, but I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go for a long walk. I'm gonna go for a long walk. I'm gonna sing with the birds and see what comes, like get my feet on the earth. And as soon as I tune out and just completely let go of the idea of like, oh yeah, create something for something, as soon as I just get out and have fun and get back to the bliss, it's like I'll turn my phone back on because it's pretty much on do not disturb like 24/7. But when I put it back on, it's like, oh, people are booking in, tickets are selling, because I got out of my own way. And from my electrical engineering degree, the one thing I can say that I have retained is, the flow of current, right? The flow of energy. When there's too much resistance, current can't flow. And I realized that I was completely resisting myself by putting so much pressure to force and to will and to construct the universe to be, what I think it should be, and what we think things should be and how they're meant to be are not always the same. And sometimes it's a rude awakening and what that looks like. But yeah.
I like that reminder, because that reminds me as well. I keep doing that because there is this feeling of like, if we're constantly working, there's so much resistance and we get tired, and we keep going, and it's too much. And there's been times where I've done exactly the same as you. It's like, do you know what? I'm going to a beach. I mean, you know where we live. Like, there's like 8 beaches around me. Like, I can go to any one. And I'll just go and sit on the beach and be on my own and play music and get in the water and just be and just take the day off get a bit sunburned, you know, and then when I get back to work, I'm like, oh, I'm fresh and I'm inspired. Because a lot of the work that we do, it calls for like being an open channel, right? We have to listen to the messages coming through. And if we're always focused on the work, we can't actually get the inspiration. And so by going out and doing nature, reconnecting, yoga, like you and I go to the same yoga studio, we know what the vibe there is always really beautiful, good vibes. It's one of the reasons I moved back here, actually. So just doing that and getting out of your head into your body, all the inspiration comes back. But the way that the world runs and the way that we kind of, everyone works and 9 to 5 and do, you know, doing all these things, people don't have a lot of time to actually open up and inspiration. And it takes a bit of practice, right? Like when you start living your life intuitively and listening to guidance, you have to, it kind of calls for you to look at everything differently and move differently. And I still remember like when I first had a spiritual awakening, it was just chaos. I don't know about you, mine was chaos. It was like it one day just clicked like that, just like you said, well, 1+1 = 2 yesterday, now it equals 7. So what am I supposed to do with that? And you feel very alone, and you know, you feel very different, and you feel very misunderstood. You disassociate, you don't know what to do with that. And I was lucky I had a sister who was like, look, if you feel this way, write a book, build a website, do something. And I did that. I wrote my first book in that first year, which is free now on my website for anyone who wants to get it. It's a free ebook. But I just did it and went with it and was cool to it and trusted. But it does feel very chaotic. But then, like you said, the dark night of the decade, you get used to the steps. Like, oh, here we go again, we're going down. Or here we go again, we're going through some change. And the more you go through that and navigate, I think you kind of get used to like the steps. So like, okay, it doesn't feel great, but I know what to do. It's like when you have a breakup, it's like, okay, it doesn't feel nice, but I've done enough of these to know what I need to do to move myself forward.
And I know, I mean, it's eclipse season, but I could blame this on any planet. I think a lot of us have been feeling really heavy emotion, and I mean, I'm not going to ignore the massive elephant in the room of what's going on in the world right now, and a lot of the pain and suffering, and I think it's causing people to really reevaluate, you know, what they're doing, how they're spending their energy, what they're prioritizing, and ultimately it takes those dark nights of the souls and that breaking point for you to wake up. And I mean, just in the last 2 months, I've been like, and it's been a magical and wild and mysterious and terrifying and all of that, and really understanding that that is the wild feminine. That is, you know, she's crazy, she's wild, she's fun, she's ugly, she's raw, and you know, like allowing my voice to dance with that as well. And that's been a big part of, you know, the vocal activation work that I work with my clients on, is to just allow ourselves to make ugly sounds, to stick our tongue out, to make the ugly faces, to stop holding, you know, ourselves together in this pretty little shape. But I think it'd be cool if we could share some practices that have been helpful for us, because I'm sure a lot of people watching or joining may be curious to know how they can tap more into their wild feminine. And to be fair, like, people may not understand that the wild feminine doesn't necessarily need to be within a woman. We've got, you know, men have their divine masculine and their divine feminine, and ultimately we should have balance between both of those. And I know personally, I identify as a woman, but most of my life I was fully embodying masculine, and I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was very scared of the feminine qualities within me because they didn't make sense, and I couldn't measure them, and they weren't consistent, and they weren't reliable, and they caused me pain. And so anything that caused you pain, you know, as a child especially, you're like, okay, well, let's put that in that box and just zip it up. And, you know, 20-something years later, you're like, oh, this hurts. What do I do? So for me, in terms of practices that I've really found useful is, first and foremost, movement, getting your feet on the earth, whether it's, you know, shaking medicine, dancing, yoga, working with the body, moving the body, using breath, and using your voice to just tap into sound and move things and getting out of your head about like what it needs to sound like and releasing all fucks about what the people think who may see you dancing on the beach like a maniac, which, you know, if anyone who lives in Manly has probably seen this crazy chick dancing on the beach from time to time, just having a good time. So yeah, tell me a bit more about your like embodiment practices and what helps you shift into your
Me, I like to be in nature. I like to go out on bushwalks. I like to take my shoes off. I've always been like someone that just wants to walk around town with no shoes on, bare feet on the earth, don't care. So that's one of my biggest things I like to do. But I really like it when we teach women to move through anger, because my wild feminine, we woke up through rage, and it's a long story, so I won't fully go into it. But people can obviously pick up my channel and talk about it a bit. But this rage of like when I tuned into everything I'd been through and this persona that I'd created, like you said, pretty face and shape and like this rage came out of like, Laura, you keep putting yourself in situations where you're getting hurt, where people aren't respecting you, where you're not being treated well, and you're desperate to be seen and heard properly. This rage kind of started to come out. I was so angry that I had put myself in those situations. So for me, I was like, I started doing practices on letting the anger out. And when I work with clients physically, when they're with me, not online, I will get them to sit, like sit on their knees and fall forward onto their hands and bang the ground and feel rage.
Ooh.
And there's something. I mean, my picture on my Instagram is that exact position. That's the pose. Yeah. And maybe it means something in yoga. You would know more than me about that. But just bringing your fist to the ground and just holding onto the ground and just letting the anger out. It's like a lion roaring. It's like it opens up wildness. And when that activated me 3 years ago, I was just like this. It was literally like something that woke up and went, I remember who I am now. How dare people treat me like that? How dare they treat me like that? I'm a nice person. I'm kind to people. I look after people, and that's how I get treated. Or the rage. But the rage is connected to, you know, the dark feminine and the wild feminine, and like you say, not just being perfect and pretty and don't get angry, calm down. You know, my mum used to say that a lot, like calm down. Like I'm not allowed to be annoyed at this situation. Like calm down, be nice. And I'm like, I don't want to be. I don't want to be nice because this person's not being nice. And I will bring out that wild feminine sometimes with some of the comments that I get are so inappropriate and so it's projection, and you know, sometimes I can let it go, and other times that wild feminine comes out for a snarky remark and an icon of a mirror. She just wants to come out and play and be like, no, because I'm very protecting, like that fiery, like I'm fiercely protective of myself and anyone in my tribe. Like if anyone tried to touch anyone in my tribe, good luck. I would not recommend it. So my wild feminine has this real motherly, like protective energy. So I think we're surprised at what our wild feminine looks like until we really tune into it. Mm-hmm. And it's there all along. We just shut it down because it's not accepted. That's all it is. It's not accepted. And this idea that we have to be the same every day, I had to really like work on that, because I used to feel really guilty. Like, oh, hang on a minute. Yesterday I felt really motivated, and today I just want to go to the beach and ice cream. Like, wait, I should be doing what I did yesterday. And I felt so ashamed of myself that I couldn't keep it together. I couldn't keep doing the same thing over and over again, like a man. But I'm not a man. I'm a woman. So learning to accept that and be proud of that, and then use it to your abilities, right? When you know, okay, today I've got energy for that, so I'm going to go and do that, but tomorrow I might not. So maybe tomorrow's a beach day or a walking day or coffee with you, like a yoga and coffee. So it's just learning to go with that, right? And embody that. Yeah, I say sacred rage, 100%.
I just saw a question that I think might be useful. How do we change how we express being upset, angry, assertive when it's developed into something we don't like? Great question. And the garbages are being taken out. I'm going to close this window.
Well, I think that speaking in the moment is probably never the best idea, right? Never say, I always say, like, don't make decisions and don't say anything when you're really angry, but also don't make decisions when you're really happy. You know, when you're like, oh yeah, next weekend we'll go and do that thing, we'll make plans. And then next week comes along and you're like, damn it, I just want to be in bed. I don't want to do those plans. So I think like when you're angry with someone, like I'll always take time out and be like, look, can you create some time for me to have a conversation, because something happened the other day and it really upset me and we need to have a conversation about it. And then I'll fully bring that conversation forward. But in the moment, when the trigger is there and you're speaking through the trigger, then I think we end up saying things that we are maybe exaggerated, not true. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think absolutely. I've learned from impulsively reacting as opposed to calmly responding that it doesn't really result in outcomes that you're happy with. And I like what you said about not necessarily saying yes to all the things just because you're in a good mood, because I've done that where I said yes to all the things. And I'm like, just got to say yes to the universe. And I'm like, shit, what have I signed up for? And then you realize you've completely depleted your energy system, and which then goes sort of into that theme of people pleasing, of just wanting to say yes. And yeah, so that's a whole other topic we could spin on. But I think, yeah, I would like to touch a bit about on that, the people pleasing and the ability to receive. And because I think for me, and I think a lot of women, we are very empathetic. We feel the need of, everybody around us. And oftentimes we sacrifice our own needs to support somebody else in need. And from my own experience, the more that we tend to everyone else's needs, it's like we're putting this signal out to the universe that we are not worthy of receiving because we are in giving mode. And I've found that the more I've been able to say no, and the more I've been able to say, I understand that you're in need right now, but I don't have the energy, the more I'm creating that vibration into the field that, okay, this woman knows her value, she is ready to receive, and it's not in a place to be depleted, because how can I serve from an empty cup? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the whole receiving and
Yeah.
giving.
Like I really, because I used to be a people pleaser as well, and I really noticed. I some of the healing work I've done, I've seen things in others that I didn't really like, and then thought, okay, where is that in me? Because I don't like seeing that in others, and I would see other people being people pleasers. And what I noticed was that if you say yes to me every single time, your yes isn't very important, because you say everything. Whereas when I started meeting people that would say, oh no, I'm not going to do that today, like thank you for the invitation, but I'm not really feeling that. When they did say yes, I was like, oh my God, they really want to be here. They've said yes, which means they want to be here. And I always, bring that up to my friends as well. Like I'll say to them, one of my friends, I think is still in the room, she is hi, say to her, like, don't try and please me. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. I give permission to my friends from the beginning to be completely honest with me, you know. So I think that the yes and the no is important, because if we say yes to one thing, we're also saying no to something else, and vice versa. So we always have to think about, like, okay, if I say yes to that, what am I saying no to? And if the answer is I'm saying no to me, then there's an invitation there to reevaluate. But if I'm saying yes to me, and that means maybe saying no to you, that's very important. But we are taught to be kind of people pleasers, and then what I see in my clients is that they then attract relationships with men that are emotionally unavailable and can't give anything, because she's only a one-way energy. She's only give and not receive. So she attracts relationships with people that can't give her anything. And then she has to try and desperately get him to give to her so that she finally feels worthy of receiving. But it never works, because it doesn't work like that. It's the self, right? It's the self. That might be a whole other. I mean, we're going to go live on my channel as well at some point, right? Maybe that's the topic for it. But that's a whole conversation, right? What we attract in relationships.
And to bring it back to the wild feminine, I think it's important to acknowledge that from my perspective, and I think a lot of people would agree of this, society is terrified of the wild feminine. You know, humankind, we have been trying to take from the earth, to drill from the precious mother, to claim, to own. And, you know, you look at history, you know, witches, because they were, you know, able to seduce men, you know, magic and wild. There's just been so much fear over the wild feminine because it's magical and it's wonderful and it doesn't make sense and you can't contain it because it flows and it flies and it breathes and it sighs and all the wild elements of it. And I feel that society we're on this precipice, and I feel we've already entered this state where people are waking up and they're realizing that we can't operate like this anymore. We can't keep suppressing the wild feminine. We can't keep taking from, you know, the earth, the mother. We need to tend to these reserves, not only from the planet, but like from our own, you know, inside. And you look at, you know, the suicide rates, predominantly like middle-aged men who are hurting because they don't necessarily have an outlet or don't know that they have an outlet to express their emotions and their feelings. And so what do? They, you know, a lot of them are ending their lives because they think that there's no other way. And, you know, what I really hope that we can sort of imbue and just sort of resonate out into the field through, you know, everything that we do is that, you know, there is so much medicine in embracing our wild feminine, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, and especially for men who are feeling uncomfortable, who are feeling anxious, depressed, whatever it may be, like tuning into those feelings and really leaning in, because it is not to be feared. You know, the wild feminine within us is longing to be felt and to be expressed, whether it's sacred rage of, you know, pounding your fist on the sand, which I love that, by the way, or, you know, screaming at not screaming, singing with the trees and the birds, or whatever it may be, like just letting it get wild and weird, and letting your inner child play. And I could go on and on. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
The inner child playing is so important. I think so many of us have left the inner child behind, and there's got to be an integration of letting her play, like the maiden as well. Like, you know, you can see it in people's eyes. It was actually one of my exes from a few years ago who taught me about that, because he saw the world like a 5-year-old. It was like, look at this leaf, look at it, can you see it? Like, look at this leaf, and look at that rock, like, look at it. And I remember that when I first met him, I was like, yeah, the rock, like, I don't really understand what's so exciting. But after being with him for 2 years, you know, suddenly I was like, oh, look at the sky, look at the stars, and this magic. And even when we broke up, I went back to England, and I had a part of him with me, and he's still there, because I see the magic in everything, and we need that. You can see it in people's eyes to like wake that up, you know. But you know what you're saying about the witch, that is one of the best. Like, I took a year off after him. Actually, I took a whole year. I built an online course about it. I wrote about it. I did a whole year of the witch wound, because what I realized was that, you know, women were hung for a reason. The neck, the throat, right? The voice was silenced, and it was women being destroyed for being feminine, the divine feminine, like medicine women and healers. And so what I was noticing that was when people were coming forward to me and saying, hey, you know, can you help me? I want to do what you do. I want to put out a spiritual business, and I want to, you know, similar to what both of us do. There was always a fear there, and there was a pullback, or they couldn't speak. So I would take them back into a past life aggression and clear some of the witch wounds, and suddenly they weren't afraid, because there's a blueprint that says my gifts equal my death, and that is like a long timeline. And if that's still running every time you pick up your spiritual gifts or pick up your femininity, that version of you, I believe that everything's running simultaneously. So there's a version of you over there that's going, no, 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 no. We can't activate. We can't be the medicine woman or the healer or the breathwork teacher. There's that fear of death. My gift equals my death. So when that's cleared, suddenly women are kind of like stepping into their femininity. And I did all that work over a year. I cleared so many lifetimes of that and practiced as well, you know, new forms of spirituality and medicine. And the divine feminine was born after that. Like, I teach the divine feminine now, but the only reason I teach it is because after all that witch healing, that was the result. It was never meant to be like that. It was never like, oh, I'm going to heal all this so I can step into my feminine. It was just, I'm going to heal it because it's coming up and I know it's there and I want to understand that for myself. We all have the right to understand our journey from lifetimes ago. And the result of that was that I settled into my feminine. I was like, I'm okay now. I'm good. I'm all right. And so I recommend all women do that. All women.
Oh,
It's powerful.
I realize we've been having a good chat for a while, but I'd love for, my followers to find where they can find more of you and what you've got going on and what you got coming up. Tell us.
Yes. So you can head over to my website, which is reignitingwomen.com. That's my website. Obviously, being here, you guys can find me on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube. There's loads of videos on YouTube about these topics, and I do masterclasses there as well. So you can find me here. You can find me on YouTube. And this weekend, if anyone wants to come along, I actually have a Divine Feminine 90-minute workshop. I'm going to be hosting that this weekend. So if you want to come along to that, I want to talk to women about, women ask me, well, how do I step into my feminine softness in my marriage, or if I want to start dating, or how do I bring it to my work? And this question kept coming up. So I thought, you know what, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to do it in a Zoom setting so we can see everyone's faces, we can interact, have a chat, ask questions. And I want to talk about bringing that feminine into these different areas of your life, because I think that it looks different for everyone. I think we can struggle with that. Like, yeah, but this is such a harsh situation. How do I soften into that? And there is a way, and it does change things. But I needed a masterclass to really bring that conversation up. So if you guys want to come along, anyone that finds my Instagram, I have a link in my bio. You can just book your seat there. So I hope to see everyone there. That's what I've got going on. Me, what have you got going on?
Ooh. What do I have going? Well, this weekend I'm heading to a festival at Wiseman's Ferry to share my medicine. I'll be performing and I'll be holding a sound bath with a little bit of breath work. And then the following weekend, I've actually got two events, both in one's in Manly, one's in Brookvale. So Manly is breathwork, sound healing, and voice activation. And then on the Sunday, it's going to be yin, massage, and sound healing. So really juicy. And I've got a vocal awakening course coming out soon that I'll be sharing more on. So if anybody is not familiar with the work that I do, offering voice activation, vocal liberation coaching, mentorship, and of course private breathwork and sound healing for those who need it. But we'll be doing another one of these soon, if not next week.
Yeah, we'll do it soon. So we're going to head over to my channel and maybe have a conversation about these relationships that we were talking about, what we attract. Maybe we'll talk about that, or maybe there'll be a different conversation that wants to come forward. We don't know yet, but we will be doing that next week.
Yeah, we'll see what comes up and tune into our witchy, wild woman intuition and let it start the conversation. So I think, we've got this also on Zoom. So this will be uploaded to our YouTube channels, and head over, subscribe, and like. And I will attempt to end this live and not mess it up. I'm new to the live, so we'll see how we go. Oh, so much love for you, beautiful soul. Thank you for coming to my live.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me. And for everyone that was here and listening, and whoever's going to watch back, thank you so much. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Big love.
Bye.
Bye.